Welcome to another edition of the post-game press conference, previously on Riot Radio and now on YouTube, Spotify, and even our own website, where you can find every piece of sports content myself and my co-host do. I'm Ryan Pigeau alongside John Lodge over there. And this program's all about breaking down the recent advancements in the sports world. We got the NHL, NBA, major leagues, and the NFL. We're poised to deliver hot takes on what's that? All of it. This time on the presser, John, we're getting caught up to speed on some of the major discussions surrounding a few stories that kind of happened in the last 24 hours. We've got the NHL in Seattle announcing their name at noon this afternoon, so Twitter broke as usual, and we'll talk about the reactions to that. We've got Max Domi returning to practice with the Habs and the Pastrnak issues going on. Cam Neely coming out and commenting about little bit of concerns he's got with maybe the conditioning and the state of the Bruins going into the round robin, right, as we head into the NHL season. Then we're going to break down the Blue Jays preseason game and a half that they had in Boston over the past 2 days. And, of course, get into the devastating news that we're all still trying to deal with. Wednesday morning, we found out Pennsylvania government had denied our team the home games that we so thought were going to be played at PNC Park. And, John, I know you're just as surprised as me, but the scramble is on. Like, do we mention it's opening day? We've got baseball back, and we don't even have a home for our Toronto Blue Jays. There's, potential that they could play the whole season on the road. And not only that, but we found out that we're expanding the playoffs to 16 teams from originally 10. We got a whole slew of news that really just opened up in the last 24 hours. There's lots to get into on all fronts. So what do you think, man? How do we get started here? You take the reins on the sport, because it doesn't matter what sport we choose. There's hot takes to go around.
Yeah, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't start off with what our viewer base is here to listen to, and that's NHL news. I know that we love all sports equally, but you got to speak to your base, and I think that we're speaking to a lot of hockey fans and big hockey news. I don't know. Actually, I do know about you because I texted you right away as soon as Seattle released the video last night, the hype video for today's name unveiling, and everybody was questioning what the name was going to be. It's funny because the Seattle mayor had actually tweeted a few months back, well before the pandemic, tweeted out the name Kraken, and I think it was to gauge public response to it, and it didn't get quite the feedback they were expecting, and they went with the name anyway. And I got my reservations, but what do you think about the name and the logo?
Well, like you said, you texted me, we were talking about it right away, and I don't know, I'm very easy to please. Maybe that's what it is, because I liked it. I really love the Vegas Golden Knights expansion stuff. Matter of fact, it was the gray jersey, the home jersey, that took a minute to wear on me. I like them both, but of course the white is so crispy and clean. And I think I'm relating that to this expansion team because they both have that same look, right? Seattle, the new Kraken team, you're not going to get anything super classic. I hope you weren't expecting any basic colors or any real basic things, because this has the air of like this NLL, the National Lacrosse League, the way over the last 5 or so years they've continued to expand. And they've got really cool team names, like really modern, and even in the American Football Alliance, right? We talked a bit about that right when that season started on our show. They had some really cool names, did they not? So the Seattle Kraken does have that new 2020 air about it. And for me, seeing that S, the really sharp S logo, if you haven't seen it, you've got to look it up and you'll see what we're talking about. But little red eye at the top, and it's got the using some negative space in the S to have a tentacle in there. Just the subtle dynamics are cool. Then you move on to the secondary logo, and you see that it's an anchor with the Space Needle in the back. So all around, like the color scheme and just the amount of effort you can tell that went into the thoughts behind the logos and stuff. I mean, I'm a big fan of that. So I am easy to please. But I can see where some people might have, and your imagination runs wild for the period of time where we're waiting for this information to come out. So you start to think, okay, Seattle Sasquatch, are they going to do the sock eyes? Is it going to be a wicked, like a big fish? Is it going to be something maybe that's not so much of a predator, so intimidating, but just something that represents Seattle? Could it be a throwback to the Metropolitans? And it sounds like you've read up a lot more on this, so I'll let you take over in a second, but it sounds like that logo, the original or the base logo, it does have an inspiration drawn off of the Seattle Metropolitans hockey organization. So again, they took a little bit of extra effort and time into their what seems like really modern and up-to-date stuff, and they took old historical references and they threw them in there. So I'm a big fan, but I'm easy to please.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess, I've looked at the logo and I even tweeted it. I'm sure it'll grow on me more as time goes on. But, the main logo is great. I love it. I think that I think they encompassed everything that they needed to for the area. But the secondary logo to me, I mean, if you think it, sorry, as I stumble over words,
It's okay.
I think if you're going with the name Kraken, you have to have some sort of a squid on your jersey or some sort of reference to it, because I mean, we know Jerry Bruckheimer, he's a part owner of the team. He made Pirates of the Caribbean. The Kraken was a thing from Pirates of the Caribbean. Now
Right.
obviously it's been in lore well before movies, but also a tie to the team through the legendary director, right? So
For sure.
I understand the marketing ploy to that, because that is, Jerry Bruckheimer is more famous in some places of the world than the NHL, right? So you could tie the name Kraken with Jerry Bruckheimer, and you might be getting some movie buffs who accidentally click on that, and then they see it's a hockey team, and you might make a fair weather fan that way, a bandwagon fan, and that's where a lot of the money is made. Everybody wants their diehard fans, but you want those bandwagon fans because that's where the extra cash is at, right? That's where you make your bank. So I mean, I get the marketing. I get the reason for choosing the name. I just would have gone with maybe a squid or something on the shoulder, something fun for the kids, right? Like, I understand that, it's silly to have it on there, but you got to think of the demographic that you're trying to go after here, right? And parents taking their children to hockey games. It's been a pastime for ages, right? So I think it needs to be a little bit more kid oriented. And I was talking with someone earlier, it seems more tattoo oriented, really. When you look at it, it seems like flash art, which is good throwback to the area, but still not marketed towards children.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I've got an article here too. We can look at some of the potential choices that they could have gone with, right? I was looking at the Seattle Rainers was one of their options. So, I mean, I'm just gauging my own personal, this is all just, we're talking about preference, right? But Seattle Seals, Seattle Evergreens, Seattle Emeralds, a lot of these I don't think would have had that same kind of intimidating level. And again, on the same list, you've got Seattle Sockeyes, which is a really one that people were pushing for. I think the big three really were Seattle Sockeyes, Seattle Sasquatch. I kept hearing that all over the place. And I personally think I might have, if I was naming
Maybe
like
for
a
the
NHL
AHL
20
team.
franchise, I would name them the Sasquatch. Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe for the AHL team.
There you
Right?
go. The
Name them the
Sasquatch.
Sasquatch. It sounds like an AHL team name. Like you got the Lake Erie Monsters and stuff like that in the
Ooh.
AHL. So you could definitely, I could see the Seattle Sasquatch as an AHL affiliate of the Seattle Kraken. The name for me that I wanted was the Evergreen or the Emerald, something
Yeah.
that throwback to Portland's
Yeah.
forestry, right?
Yep.
So and I get that it's a little bit not imaginative. So I understand why you want to go with something a little bit more fanatical, but the classical or like the classic throwback hockey fan in me wanted something standard, something
And
not
see,
too
oh,
flashy.
sorry, the heavy metal fan in me kind of wanted the Rainiers, and I pronounced that wrong because I was reading it too quick. But it is based on Mount Rainier, which is just a half-hour drive from Seattle. But there's the band. Holy smokes, Alice in Chains. As I almost lose my train of thought, they've got a new album, Mount Rainier, and again, Rainier Fog, I guess, is the name of the album. But in the same reference that the Seattle Rainiers would have been, I mean, I can connect those two just based on my interests, right? Imagine they come out to that Rainier Fog as their intro, the Seattle Rainiers. Like I could already kind of put that together and get excited about it. But nevertheless, the Seattle Kraken is the name. It's a unique choice, right? It's one of those you can kind of see where it came from and you can kind of see where it might go. I don't know if they're going to keep all the branding forever. It's an expansion team. So again, I'm easy to please. I like things. I'm usually, as much as I'm critical about a lot of my own personal stuff, I'm usually pretty easy to please when it comes to jerseys and things that come out. A lot of people hate those. Do you remember the Avalanche and Kings Winter Classic or outdoor stadium jerseys that people were puking all over? I seem to like everything that comes out when it comes to jerseys, but maybe I'm a nerd that way too.
I mean, I have a few jerseys out there that I'm partial to, but nostalgia plays a factor in that. Like the steampunk coyote.
Oh yeah.
That's a classic now. When before we were all laughing at it, right? We were like, "What the heck are they wearing on their jersey?" So
Yeah.
it's not. We're talking about the name and the logo and the jersey, but that's not the coolest thing about Seattle that we learned today. They have the first self-efficient arena in North America.
So tell me more about that. Because when I
So
hear self-efficient, I don't quite have a definition for you nowadays.
it's green. It's a green arena, and so the arena originally was gas powered for a lot of stuff. They tore out all the gas piping. They upgraded all the electronics. Everything is run on electricity there. The pop, the beer, the food, it's all in biodisposable containers. They went to the factories and the factories had to rework their machines to not take plastic and make these containers for the arena so that they could represent the area, which is a very environmentally friendly area. So they're doing their part to lower their carbon footprint, and this is the wave of the future for sports teams if they want to exist. And I think it's a good step for Seattle, a good first step. Really interesting to me.
That is interesting. Yeah, I don't expect to hear stories like that, but it is 2020. We're trying to save the planet out here, right? And we are, the Kraken, so we're right by the ocean. We better save that ocean while we're here. So good for them to kind of take the initiative to spend that much effort on, investing in their arena like that. And having that kind of plan is nice to hear.
Getting back quickly to the jerseys, there is a third and fourth jersey in the works.
Ooh, so we're all looking forward to those.
We'll get a couple other designs as well. Maybe I assume they'll have at least one alternate for the start of their season, which will be in January. So we'll see. Coming up, some more jersey designs. Maybe we get Fanatical Kraken. Maybe not as the main logo. I'm not for that, but like something just to catch your eye as the guys skating by.
Well, we've got two guys back in jerseys. There's a Mark Rowe segue for you here. Max Domi and Sidney Crosby. They're both kind of skating with their team now. Crosby's been out since Saturday with an undisclosed injury. So anybody who pays enough attention to the NHL knows he's an important piece to the Penguins. So heading back into their battle here, he's essentially skating with them and should be with them. But it's Domi joining the Habs that kind of answered a lot of questions we've had on the past two episodes, right? Is he going to stay home and protect himself, or does he find that it isn't a great enough risk to have to do those, take those measures? And again, we got our answer this week. He's going to join the Habs, and he said, again, it's his own decision, right? Everybody, and he's not speaking for any other type 1 diabetics in the league or even just in the world. He's deciding to make a decision, or deciding to take a risk. He's trying to say here that he thinks isn't great enough to really affect his health in a great way. So what's your take on Domi joining the Habs? Are you thinking he's made the right decision, or do you have a hot take telling him to stay home?
No, this is exactly what I thought was going to happen. Yeah. I mean, we talked about it. We talked about this is part of the conversation when we were talking about who's going to stay home, who's going to opt out. And I was like, there's no way on God's green earth, whatever you want to say, that Max Domi, that last name Domi, was not going to show up for a chance to win the Stanley Cup when 2.5 months ago or 3 months ago, whenever the season started, he had zero chance. Absolutely none. There's no way. The competitive nature in this kid is too strong. That's why I've always wanted him on the Leafs, by the way. He just got that extra level, that fifth gear, sixth gear he can kick it into. And I know he comes with his downfalls, but yeah, there's no way in my mind that Max Domi was ever going to miss the season or this restart and this 5-game tournament. I mean, it's crazy. Just think about it. I get that Pittsburgh has Sidney Crosby coming back, and Sidney Crosby's fantastic, but just think about it. Whoever has the hot goalie wins. And going into this, Pittsburgh's goaltending situation was up in the air.
Yep.
We didn't know who was the number one, and if Carey Price is on fire, we could be talking about the Montreal Canadiens moving into the Stanley Cup playoffs and Pittsburgh Penguins possibly, like I said, a chance to pick Alex Lafreniere.
It always goes back to that. I had a friend speaking to me. He's a Pittsburgh Penguins fan, and he said, imagine how gross it would be if they got Alexis Lafreniere. And I looked him dead in the eye, and I said, man, if they even have a shot, and if they get Alexis Lafreniere, it's strictly on the back of Carey Price. There's nobody else that you can blame if Pittsburgh ends up with Alexis Lafreniere on their team, because there should be no way that Pittsburgh crumbles to Montreal. I know it's a 5-game series, but we're talking about like a skilled team that's won. Like this core has won 2 Stanley Cups, but like their leaders have won 3 on this Pittsburgh team. Compared to, he might be or might have been one of the best goalies. Canada's goalie, Carey Price, Carey Habs. But essentially, I don't think Montreal has a chance. And if they do some way or another squeak 3 wins out of Pittsburgh, it's his fault. It's his fault completely. It goes right back to Alexis Lafreniere, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, always, man. I mean, I can't imagine having Malkin, Crosby, and Lafreniere on the same team. I mean, I thought Malkin, Crosby, Kessel was bad. but like Malcolm Crosby, Lafreniere, I'm just like, go grab your towels now and start your tissues now and start crying. It's insane. Did you hear what Shea Weber did at practice?
No, what's going on there?
So I don't have all the information, but apparently there was a drill, and Shea Weber drilled the backup goaltender so hard that the puck went through his mask.
What?
Yeah.
And did it touch his face, or did it get
I
launched?
don't. Well, apparently it knocked the goalie down, and there was a big
Oh, excuse me.
gathering at the crease, and not in that gathering was Shea Weber. Shea was apparently at the top of the, just waiting to go again. So.
Doesn't phase him. Almost kills a teammate with a slap shot. Ah, that's life. That's hockey for you.
Yeah, it was just a slog goalie, right? It was just a plug. It wasn't Carey. He was okay. If it was Carey, could you imagine if that was Carey and he took that to? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they know better, especially the guys that, aren't fighting for a job in the NHL. Like, not to hurt your goaltender, especially in practice. That always brings me back to when Garrett Sparks was struggling and he was our only goaltender, and Nylander was like, accused of hurting Garrett Sparks in practice with a high shot. And it's like, oh my God, you realize you're trying to protect these guys in practice. You're not trying to kill your goalie, man. Save that for Shea Weber when he's playing against you. You're not supposed to do that in practice. Anyway, we got, like I said, Crosby's return for the Penguins, Domi's return for the Habs. Those two teams are going to square off. I don't see Pittsburgh having any disadvantage in that series, but if one way or another, if we see Montreal successful, it's solely on the back of Carey Price and maybe a little bit of impact from Max. But I think let's talk about Pastrnak and is it Andre Kasha, because they both came back late from wherever they were. I think they were over in Europe, right? Czech Republic.
Yeah.
And because of that, they didn't really get to skate with the team, and this is where it gets a little foggy. There hasn't been a confirmation that either one of them have tested positive for COVID, correct?
No, I haven't had any news about a positive test. I have heard they tested negative, but they came in contact with somebody who tested positive.
Okay.
And that's what pissed off Neely.
So
bad decision making is what he called it, right?
Either way, from what I understand, they're not skating with the Bruins and may not skate until they hit the hub city in Toronto, right? So we're talking teams like the Leafs have been back together we're getting close to 3 weeks now, officially practicing for, I want to say, a week and a half. But that a lot of them were out on the ice 6 at a time, 5 at a time, getting a lot of things done before we saw the team v team scrimmages that everyone's talking about, Nick Robertson lighting it up and all that kind of stuff. But what it really comes down to here is you've got two guys who are going to be important to the Bruins. Thankfully, they're not in an elimination round right away, but their conditioning is definitely going to be questioned, is it not? The way that they haven't really been able to skate with the team. You'd think that they've been getting some stuff done on their own, but if they're not going to get to the bubble, they're not going to skate until they get to the bubble, and then provided that, they may not even be inserted into the lineup for the first game or two because of that. You could see Pastrnak more significantly than Kasha, but at 0.5%, or you could at least see it really affect him, the fact that he hasn't been with the team for this long. That could make a difference the way the Bruins are successful or not in their elimination round when it actually gets to it. But do you have any steaming hot takes on what's going on here? Cam Neely didn't seem too happy about it.
Yeah. Well, first things first, Pastrnak, this is the guy who won or tied for the Richard, right? So number one goal scorer, tied for the number one goal scorer in the league. This is a big loss for the Boston Bruins, and not having him until he comes to Toronto. You don't, like you said, you don't know what his conditioning is. You don't know if he can go out there and play on your top line and how long it's going to take him to get ready. I think it's foolish. I mean, I can understand not wanting to come back to America, because if you're sitting in the Czech Republic and you're seeing what's happening in America up to this point, you're like, I'm trying to delay that as much as possible. If he could have flown directly to Canada, I bet you he would have. But I can understand not wanting to get back to Boston because of the outbreaks that are happening in America. But you have to get back there sooner. You have to be more responsible. You're a professional athlete, right? Like whoever this guy came in contact with that had COVID, you possibly could have infected Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand, because he skated with the team for a day.
Yeah, that's one of the bigger issues.
He skated in there, right? Or at least skated with them. So he was around the trainers, he was around the coaching staff, he was around the number one line, and so this could have been detrimental to the Boston Bruins. Now, obviously, we've found out so far that hasn't been the case. Hopefully, it continues to be the case, and we don't have an outbreak on the Bruins. But yeah, I can understand the president, Cam Neely, it's president, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I can understand his displeasure with. You can't say too much though, right? You can't you can't put the guy on blast in the media because you know who he is.
No, but
He's
it
your
was it
number
was
one
the
goal
tone.
scorer.
It definitely was the tone there, right?
Yeah,
Jumping on real quick
disappointment.
because we have a lot to get to, but again, in the NHL, Seattle, the bigger story. We've got a little bit of side stories when it comes into actually getting into play, but the one that actually also hit the headlines this week was the Hart and Lindsay Trophy finalists are essentially the same, right? You've got Panarin, Draisaitl, and McKinnon nominated for all three. Now, again, that's just essentially your peers versus the hockey writers, but this year it doesn't make a difference. Uh, both sets of players, are being nominated for both awards. So, real quick, do you have like someone that really is a runaway winner of these three candidates? Because I think I've got one, but there are others like Connor McDavid who has his own arguments you've heard this week. So, what do you think, man?
Um, I think
And why, obviously.
well, it's tough, right? Because Panarin elevated the Rangers a
Yep,
lot this year,
for sure.
but Draisaitl did the same thing for the Oilers, especially without having Connor McDavid for a lot of it. So
And a second
these
time.
three guys, honestly, man, these three guys, it's really a crapshoot, right? You might as well roll the dice to find out who wins this. But
Yeah.
I think if you want one take for sure from me, two different people win.
Okay, that's what my second question was going to be. Do you think the players and hockey writers both get it right per se? Like, do you think usually we kind of give more credit to the one that the players vote on, obviously, right? Because they seem to know the player that wins it more intimately. They play against him. It's not just a hockey writer with his subtle nuances as he types along and his subtle biases based on each team, right? We're talking about your peers. But you think it's going to be different, eh? The writers and the players aren't going to agree this time around?
I think Panarin, now that I'm thinking about it and putting myself in the proper mindset here,
Okay.
I think the players choose Draisaitl and the media chooses McKinnon.
Oh, and you're leaving Panarin in the dust, unfortunately, just based
No,
on process of elimination?
just process of elimination. Like I
Yeah.
said, these three guys, it's a roll of the dice for
Yep.
whoever wins. They're all amazing players, but I think that the media is going to put a lot of research, I would like to think, into it. And the players will go by the eye test, right? It's what they know. It's who they know. They know these guys, right? They know them on a level media and no one else knows. So yeah, I think the media is going to go with McKinnon and the players are going to go with Draisaitl.
Interesting. Okay. And I'm glad ours are different because I think the players are going to go with McKinnon. Although I think the players have a tough choice between Draisaitl and McKinnon. I really think they do because Draisaitl, like you said, he's done it without McDavid. He scored, is it now back-to-back 50-goal seasons or just about? Like he was on
Yeah,
pace
just
for a
about. Yeah.
second, and that was my point. It's like he's done it consistently. He's going to have to be awarded for that eventually. But I think McKinnon, between all like betwixt, let's get cute. Betwixt all the NHL players, I think it's common understanding that McKinnon is like Sid 2.0. He's right behind Connor, and because Connor's not in this list and Draisaitl's already there, for something tells me that the players are going to unanimously see that McKinnon name and go, oh, why wouldn't it be him? Just because of how he seems to be talked about amongst his peers, and that's my point. But I think, on the other hand, the guy we've left out so far, Panarin, Artemi Panarin, is my take for the hockey writers because I think a lot of times you've seen them do it with Taylor Hall. They put a lot of stake on a guy on a weaker team that does as much as he does and has so much more of a head or a lead on like the second or the third point producer on that team. Now, again, I can't remember if Zibanejad or if there was another guy that was coming close. So I'm quickly just taking that off the top of my head. But similar to what they've done in past years where, there was Connor McDavid in the year that Taylor Hall won and McDavid still ended up. It was almost like we know he's going to get his cookies down the road. Let's give it to Hall while he's got a window to win it. I think that's the interesting part about Panarin. He's won his Calder, and I think maybe this is the year that he's going to win the Hart and then the Lindsay will go to McKinnon. The players are going to unanimously think that Nate McKinnon is the man. But I like how ours are different because you can go back and see who's right down the road and have, I can buy you a beer, you can buy me a beer.
Yeah, well, that definitely we'll put a little wager on it. Yeah, and like I said, no love lost for Panarin. I mean, he definitely, like I said, raised the water level in New York.
Oh yeah.
He's clearly the best forward on that team, and I mean, he proved it. I can't do the can celebration. I don't know anyone else who can do the can celebration. As many times as he was pulling it off, it's surprised that his leg didn't get locked over his head. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting who comes out with it. I like your breakdown as to
Thanks.
why the media would choose Panarin. Just basically because I see both Draisaitl and McKinnon being in this race for a long time, and as good as Panarin is, he might not make it with the guys that are coming up
Okay.
behind him.
I hope I convinced you that way. Hey, I'm glad that I was able to throw that in after, because I think you're going, damn, I picked the wrong guy now. I think I convinced you.
No,
Okay, let's move on. Let's
might
move
be,
on
yeah.
because I want one more little discussion here in the NHL, and we're almost not going to get to it, so I want to throw it in there. Okay, on the last episode, we painted an interesting picture of Travis Hamonic. Okay, we said top defenseman of the Calgary Flames. We did give him credit. Okay, and you did. You went out of your way to say like he's one of the top D on the team. But you also called him a whiner, right? You called him a bit of a crybaby for asking for his trade and for constantly being the center of attention. It seems like. And I will say, John, I didn't even call you out in the moment because I kind of, I agreed. I'm like, yeah, you're right. When was the last time we heard about Travis Hamonic in a good way? But a good friend of mine who's actually dialed into the situation with Hamonic, he actually wants us to. He convinced me that I think it needs a little bit of rectifying. We're gonna, I've been convinced that we got to talk about. It's just a simple article here that was in the Hockey Writers on the HockeyWriters.com about some of the things he's involved in the community and how much of a great person he actually is. Middlevas is the guy I'm talking about, and he's just an online friend of mine. He's a good guy from Alberta, but he knows way too much about the Flames and the Oilers. Great local inside resource, right? Because I'm hearing all this stuff from a guy in that market, and he's comparing it to me over here in Toronto, and we talk for hours. It's crazy how we can start playing a video game and then just quit the game and talk in a party chat for hours. But in the end, he couldn't stop listing all the great things that Hamonic's actually known for, like him being an authentic community member, and for reasons that actually run deeper than most people can relate. He, long story short, lost his father, who was a farmer at age 10, and then created this, it's called the D Partner program, that he legitimately finds children who have gone through the same thing, losing a parent at a young age, and actually takes care of them, brings them to a game. He was awarded the NHL Foundation Player Award in 2017 for enriching the lives of people in his community. And here we are sitting here calling him a whiner and a bitcher and a complainer. So I wanted to make sure that it was clear. My friend, Middlevas, has essentially said, you know what, good points. But I wanted you to do a little more research on the player and find out that he's essentially, he's got reasons beyond, what are the common excuses, to back out of these bubbles. But then he's got this tweet on here, which I posted in my notes. Take over if you want, if you got any comments, because I'm going to find this tweet here that he posted just talking about why he's backing out of the bubble, which we did not read last week when we were making our comments.
I understand why he was backing out, and I know I understand this specific situation. Yeah. But have you ever heard of the story of the boy who cried wolf?
Okay, I'm very familiar with the story. I was unfortunately that child as a kid.
So, unfortunately, if you continually cry wolf, or in this case, just speak up and whine and complain out of place, then you get a reputation, 100%. And a reputation that is really hard for you to beat. He can be the man of the year off the ice, but what I remember him for, and what people in the media, at least common media, will remember him for, is him speaking out on when he was on the Islanders and whining and complaining for 2 years about wanting a trade. So yeah, great man. I understand he's done a lot of great things, and I get why he's not coming back this time.
Yep.
But when you have a reputation, you have a reputation. That's all I got to say. I'm not going to walk back my statement. I feel the way I feel about Hamonic.
Yeah.
And there are NFL players, that I have hated on the field for their attitude, for the way they carry themselves, but then off the field they do some of the most amazing charitable work. So you can be a great person all you want. It's just a character thing, in my opinion.
The reason I can't come back on you is because in your first call, you did give him the credit that he deserves as an NHL player on the ice. So you kind of went out of your way to say, like, top defenseman on the Calgary Flames. Like, you didn't go ahead and say he doesn't belong in the NHL. He doesn't have the right to be doing these things. You just kind of said, from my point of view, he's a problem. Like, I keep simming through my NHL 20, and every 2 weeks this guy comes up asking me about line issues and wanting to trade here, and have I done this for him and that for him. And again, what you're saying is, it's what have you done for me lately? And all I can remember are the subtle little things that make me go out of my way for you, rather than just the little gifts that you give me, like most players would on the ice. So I can see, and again, I can't come back on you because we said at the time, John, you're just upset because he's the first player to, turn your hot take around. You had that little soft spot about him anyway. So yeah, well, I think we'll put that to bed. But Middlevas, if you end up hearing that, at least we brought it up and we'll rectify it. That's one thing I do want to make sure we do as we kind of venture into the broadcasting world, right? If I have a take that people disagree with, I'm either going to, make sure I clarify it. I'm going to acknowledge I didn't do the research the first time if it's a situation like this. And I'm either going to walk back on it, or like John just did, I'm going to hold straight or stand straight and give you my opinion regardless, right? So I'm glad that we were able to put that to bed. But let's get into the MLB. Because again, the scramble is on, right? The most plausible destination for the Toronto Maple Leafs, Toronto Blue Jays, is probably going to be Buffalo or Dunedin, it sounds like. But it potentially could go to Baltimore. I need you to fill me in on that situation because I didn't really read enough into that. But like right now, we got a problem. Opening night, it's right now. Like I believe the MLB is beginning at 7:30 p.m. In about 7 minutes will be first pitch.
No, we have there's a score.
Yep. There you go. Like we're
There's
already
a
into
score.
this.
Yankees are winning 2-1 in the top of the second.
And yet we don't have a home destination for our Toronto Blue Jays. So that's the number one priority to discuss and, give a take on. But essentially, what's going to make the most sense? Because we can be opinionated all we want, but can we be logical here? Is there a logical move?
So here's the thing. The Canadian government, in my opinion, did this to the Blue Jays. I can understand where people might be happy that we're not having a bunch of Americans come in, but Americans are crossing the border every single day who get tested less than MLB players. I've said that before, and I'll continue to shout it off the rooftops. But when the Canadian government said no, other governments now look to that and be like, well, if your own government said no, why would I say yes? It makes us look worse. Right. So it's you definitely have to get in or get to a governor or with a government that's a little looser, someone who's a little bit more baseball friendly. I don't know if that's Maryland. Obviously Buffalo has been offered up. Most recently, Hartford, a AA team in Hartford, has offered up their facilities, which is apparently top of the state-of-the-art facilities, up to MLB standards for lighting and for clubhouse amenities and everything. So where the Blue Jays land is anybody's guess, but it's interesting that Baltimore could end up being one of the spots, because I've long said that Camden Yards is one of my favorite ballparks, and it was the ballpark built directly after the Rogers Center. Just a beautiful place. So it'll be great to see the Blue Jays play there.
I've heard in the past that the moment, everybody loved the cement Sky Dome and how one of a kind, state of the art it was, until the moment Camden Yards was finished being built, and then it automatically put it 15 years in the past. That's the take I've heard. And Camden Yard, as you said, was built almost immediately after. So that's the small window that the Sky Dome had of being, state of the art and so unique. Because again, it seems like all the ballparks since have been built in this wonderful, wide open kind of like you're going to a whole nother world when you walk in there, right? And again, the Sky Dome, or the Rogers Center as it's called now, has its own feel to it. It's cool when you look out over the wavy, hot. You can see the ripples of the heat, right? As you look over from the concourse. Dude, it's one of the coolest memories of my life. But again, you see all these other parks, and Camden Yard would be cool. Although no fans are going to get in there right now, it'd be cool to kind of call that your home field for a bit. And again, let's throw again one more time in there. I think it would be sweet. Have you ever thought about this? Traveling around North America, making sure you hit every ballpark before you die? That would be
It's on
cool.
my bucket list. It's on my bucket list for sure, dude. So yeah, it's one of those things I've long wanted to do. Whether the Blue Jays play home games or not, where they play their home games, if they're the away team for the entire season or not, I think this team has a really, really good shot at making the playoffs, especially since we now have the announcement of the expanded playoffs. So with guys like Nate Pearson on the squad, I mean, just look at what he did in the first game against Boston.
What's your takeaway from that?
Well, I was just going to say, understand he had a tough first inning. His release was a little bit off, but once he got control of that heater, we didn't see 102, by the way.
Nope.
Which is one thing I was worried about, was because, you don't want to gas out, right? Yeah, the guy can hit 102. If he was a closer, I'd want to see 102 all the time. But the fact that you saw constantly 95, 97, 98, 99,
Stamina.
99,
yeah,
it was there all the time, right? And it was there for the 3 or 4 innings he pitched.
It was 4 until Baraki, I want to say. Yeah.
Having a guy like Nate Pearson on the team is only going to help raise the water level of the pitching staff. And we've seen Matt Shoemaker in the scrimmage games. I haven't seen much of Ryu, but his past stats speak for themselves. So I think the Blue Jays, like I said, with this expanded playoffs, we could be talking about Blue Jays baseball in the playoffs. And Here's a hot take for you. If it's me and you have playoff baseball and the Canadian government's like, oh yeah, guys, you can play your playoff baseball here, I give them the big middle finger and tell them, talk to me next year.
That's funny. Yeah, it's not like they'd really make too much. Like the government wouldn't be making tons of money anyway, because again, fans aren't coming in. It's just a spot to play. But it would be funny just out of spite to say, yeah, sorry, you didn't need us back then. We don't need you now. That would be really funny. It kind of ties into what I was going to say here too. Could this be a rallying point for a young team if they are forced to play 0 home games? Like my thoughts are a little bit scattered on that, because I do think after 2 months you might start to wear down, not having a home destination where you are. But I was already thinking in a 62 game schedule, you got kids who they have no fear because they've never been. A lot of these kids are just coming up from the minors now. They're just maturing. They've got nothing to lose. I was already willing to call this team's going to go 500 in 60 games. Do you think for some reason or another, the small rallying point that this could be, do you think that makes any sense? Because I'm ready to call a more than 5. This team could be over 500, and they could, regardless of the 10 or 16 teams, I feel like they could just sneak in. Because there's a funny feeling surrounding this Blue Jays team, just the way the stars are aligning. I know it's not perfect, but like look at the arms that we've brought in. It's a 60-game schedule, man. Like it's tying in here. Do you think that's a rallying point at all for a young team, or do you think that's a joke that I'm kind of even suggesting that the 2 months of not being at home at all?
No, I mean, they were never going to be at home in the first place, really, because a lot of these guys don't live in Toronto,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
A lot of these guys live all over the world. They live in the States. So, and not having families. Like I believe Randall Grichuk has a family. There are a few Blue Jays who have wives and children. But for the most part, you're talking about young guys who just came up from the minor leagues, who are used to staying in crap box hotels,
Bus trips
and
and
taking
stuff
the
too, man.
bus everywhere,
Yep,
right?
exactly.
So this is just a step up for them. They have to travel. If they have to travel all the time, they get to stay in they're staying in the better hotels. You need, if you don't have a home per se, you need to have a training facility where they know they can train all the time, right? Somewhere where they can go and get their work in.
Somewhere to set up camp is
basically, somewhere to set up camp, somewhere that's a little bit of stability. That's all I would ask for. It's all up in the air right now. I hope that the Blue Jays land at Camden Yards, like I said, but if not, I still think this team has a great shot at being over 500, even though 500 will probably get you a playoff spot.
Yeah, and that's so you're with me. You don't think that's crazy? Because I want to have something to kind of be hopeful and call my shot on, and I haven't been right about too much lately. And I was driving in the car and I thought, yeah, this Jays team is not even crazy if they like win 35, 40 games. It's not even crazy. It's not even crazy.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I've been high on the Jays for a while. So I may be breathing in too many of the fumes.
Blue and white disease over in just a different ballpark, a different spot.
That's exactly it. Just getting high over here on Blue Jays prospect fumes, but I don't know. I mean, I think that they got a real good shot here, and we've often said that the key is the pitching staff, and we've talked about going out and buying pitching, and we thought that Ryu was going to be the beginning of buying the pitching, but if they can fill it out with their young core of players, and they only need to maybe go get one more guy, man, that's like hitting the jackpot. This is the development that we long salivated watched the Yankees and the Red Sox go through.
Yeah, see, you keep every time I start trying to get into this a bit, I hold myself back. It happened last pod where I'm like, all right, slow your roll, Ryan, and then you take over, you do the same thing the next pod. So that's a good sign. Like, it just tells me like this is the kind of team that we keep fantasizing about. We're already here. You know what I mean? And again, it tells me too, if you're going to rely on so many arms from, your own system that you maybe haven't paid yet, means you've got even that much more dollars to spend on the biggest ticket free agents that come available, provided they do want to come to Toronto. But again, winning breeds success, and success kind of gets people to come your way. So how do you think John Tavares decided to make the decision to come to Toronto? It was only because of that young team was finally showing they're developing into something. So it all kind of ties in together. More baseball news. Mookie Betts and the Dodgers reach a 12-year deal worth $365 million, extends to 2032, if I can do proper math. That's just nuts, right? We knew that was coming, and clearly the info I got today, listening to other radio shows, is that must have been worked on ahead of the COVID situation, because it seems like he got every single dollar and every single year that he was hunting for, almost like this was proposed ahead of time. And once you put money on the table, it's hard to kind of take it off. So it seems like Mookie Betts, swung a deal, if you want to, draw a pun or a comparison. Any real quick takes before we get to the more concerning stuff on opening day for the players?
If you believe Mookie, he said it was negotiated during spring training 2.0. I don't know who to believe in that situation, but I did think that we were in a pandemic and money was tight, but apparently not for Mookie and not for the Dodgers.
Yeah, that's what people are saying. It
So,
must have been done earlier on, man. It must have been at least proposed earlier on. And once that 320 or 365 has been put on the table, I guess it's kind of hard to take it off. So
Bryce Harper's making his way down that highest paid player list now.
Speaking of highly paid players too, we've got two of them now. You mentioned mentioned one to me. Wow, it's tough to talk sometimes. Right off the start of the show, it was Clayton Kershaw. Is that correct, or was it somebody else?
No, it was Kershaw. Yeah,
okay.
Big news on Kershaw today.
Because the Dodgers have gone ahead and brought up Dustin May to replace him. He was supposed to start tonight, but now we've got him and Soto testing positive for COVID-19, both coming out on opening day. And like we talked about with Pastrnak, like we're talking guys who have been with their teammates for a couple of days here. And the issue with Soto is he tested positive or took the test 2 days ago and only tested positive now. So, of course, tons of Nationals, if not all of them, have taken that same test. And, like, they've got to be wondering what's going on tonight down at the ballpark while they get ready to start opening day. They could be 48 hours away from their own positive COVID-19 test. I think that's one of the real major issues in sport today.
Yeah, it's the cloud that's going to hang over sports for the foreseeable future until we get a vaccine out there, right?
Can we avoid it when it's names like this, I guess, is the question, right?
No, you're not going to avoid it, but I don't think it's going to stop things.
Okay.
Now, so Kershaw is an injury. It's a muscle pull. It's not COVID. So he's
You're right.
out.
I forgot about that. Sorry.
He's out due to injury as I adjust my camera here mid-shot.
And you told me that earlier. I just completely forgot as I was typing out other things. So you already mentioned it wasn't COVID.
Juan Soto is the big one. And so before I get to that, talking about Kershaw, it's a huge loss to the Dodgers. Don't know how long he's going to be out. Calling up Dustin May. I mean, he's one of their better pitching prospects. I mean, and the guy's got the best throw in the entire major leagues.
Oh my God,
in all of baseball. If you haven't seen it, go take a look.
And he looks 13 years old too. He looks 13 and 7 feet tall, but he honestly looks like a 13-year-old kid.
So we'll see if May has. He's going to be starting tonight. So we'll see if he has a good first opening day start. And moving on to Juan Soto, though, that's the concerning one, right? Because a couple days ago he was playing scrimmage games, he was playing exhibition games, he was training, he was all around the staff, and now today or yesterday he tested positive for COVID. And now you're wondering, you're sitting in this air of caution, right? You're wondering, is Adam Eaton going to test positive? Are other stars on the team? Is Victor Robles? Is Max Scherzer? Who's the next guy to drop here from Washington? Or did they end up getting away unscathed with this? It's going to be a question that not only is in the minds of the Nationals, it's going to be in the minds of the Yankees tonight because they're playing these guys, right? So if Soto has tested positive and then someone else is infected and they're on the field with the Yankees, and then you could just see where this snowballs, right? It's crazy and it's really scary right now. So hopefully everyone got away with unscathed, but we're not going to know for a few days.
It's where I think the MLB and the NFL are doing things wrong by not designating bubble cities and trying to corral all their players ahead of time and you really control the spread of the disease. As you see in the NBA, they keep boasting, whether or not it's accurate or whether or not it stays consistent, that they haven't had a single COVID-19 positive test since like forming and going into the bubble. So it tells you right there that they're working. It gives a positive outlook on the NHL in the next week or so as we move down to the bubble and start up the season. But it reminds you that because the MLB and the NFL are doing this so willy-nilly and deciding to kind of almost throw COVID to the wind. There's a new phrase for you, right? Like they've almost pretended like it's not a thing the way they're starting up their season. They've spent so much time working on the new negotiations that made them look bad. And then after that was done, they were kind of looked a little bit bush league by not designating a bubble city, but people kind of forgot about that. Now here we are talking about expanding the playoffs, but we haven't really decided like how we're going to stop the spread of COVID. And again, opening day, we finally have a star athlete who 2 days ago did a test, spent for a full 48 hours with his teammates, and now those same teammates will spend a full 48 hours playing against opponents likely to spread. Without a bubble, this is almost the guarantee. So we're going to sit here and wait for confirmation, basically, of who has COVID now and who doesn't. And it's probably going to be a chain reaction. I can assume that because they didn't get this under control, again, it's not like who was it in the NBA that spread it the first time and was the big,
Rudy Gobert.
It's not a Rudy Gobert issue. We're not talking like that. But Juan Soto seems to be he might be the poster boy for the MLB's wave of COVID. I'm going to call that right. And I kind of throw that out as a take right now. Like we could be sitting here next time we record with the whole "I told you so." Why didn't you do a bubble thing? Not to put a damper on opening night, but that's how I feel about it.
No, I was going to agree with that. I'm just it's funny how you brought up Rudy Gobert. It's like you have a psychic link with me. I was going to bring
good for a co-host.
And I was going to say, I was like, I'm just waiting now for the night when I'm sitting down watching baseball and I see someone run out waving their arms around, stopping the game. The MLB's called it and the season is put on hold because
it's like a movie. It's like a movie, man. I can picture like a 2022 summer picture where that's like the opening scene is like a big, heavy, it's the World Series, or whatever, you know what I'm talking about? It's the NHL final and they're coming out and waving kids off the ice because game over. Like we got another pandemic going on. It's nuts because I can imagine exactly what you're talking about. I don't think we're actually as far away from that as it sounds so crazy and so much like a storyboard material. It sounds like it could be possible at any turn nowadays.
Yeah, who would have thought that they got it wrong with 2012 and it was 2020 and the end of the road was caused by sports and
those Mayans.
It's insane. It'll be interesting to see where it goes, but I don't think baseball finishes the season, as sad as it sounds, as much as I want them to. Now, under the current model, it just doesn't seem feasible.
It's starting to make more and more sense why you hear broadcasters, guys that we listen to all week, say like the NHL and the NBA are the two leagues that really seem like they might be doing it right or doing it the best. Even the MLS had to kind of slow down and start back up. And going back right into the NBA, because we don't have too much more to talk about. The big news was the MLB opening day and all these positive tests that we just got through. But even in the bubble, we've got Zion, who's now testing for COVID. His return to the bubble isn't certain yet. But we talked about that last week, John. You stressed about how important it is for him to be part of every single game that the Pelicans play, that he cannot miss a single one. So that the fate of their success really relies on how prompt his return is. And if he doesn't return if he does, I should say, return in the next few days, that means he could have a shot at being in that lineup July 30th, which is game 1 against Utah. But there's still no current timetable. He still intends to rejoin the team, but the Pelicans said they don't have a guarantee. So do you have any thoughts on that? Anything change on that? Or are you getting a little bit more positive for the Pelicans, at least finding out that he's testing positive or testing for COVID-19? So many terms here.
I would just like to say that I came to the assumption that the NBA created this little tournament for Zion before I heard everybody else in the media talking about it. So I did not rip that off. I'm not saying that was an original thought and
it makes
I was
a lot
the
of
only
sense.
one to think about that. But it kind of just stares at you right in the face. And if Zion, it's just insane because you're listening to guys talk about it, and there's saying that the NBA created the schedule at the beginning of the season for Zion and he wasn't ready, and now they've created this other schedule for Zion, and imagine if he's not ready yet again. And another question, I get that he's testing negative and he's taking tests daily, but is he required to quarantine at all when he comes back? Is it going to be a 2-day, a 4-day? What is it going to be? What's the protocol for this? It's just interesting. And are they going to break the rules for the guy they made the season for?
Well, I think to answer that, if he intends to return to the team and he's returning to the bubble, it's still uncertain. But if he's intending to return to the bubble, I believe if he tests negative twice for COVID, he can enter the bubble within like this week, right? So if he's testing for COVID now, this first test, if he comes back negative and does another test and comes back negative, I believe there is no quarantine involved. I believe this is currently that same quarantine that we don't know about yet that you were just referencing. So the benefit there would be he probably only has to go through this and one more test, provided they do come back negative, and then he's right back in the bubble. Conditioning is another question mark, but I think like that's the beauty of the bubble is that they're kind of in their own quarantine, so they wouldn't have to go ahead and then quarantine to get in there, I think. But John, like we live in a whole other world. It's nuts.
Yeah, his conditioning has been brought up a lot. His body size, and that's another thing we talked about when he was drafted. We talked about it at the beginning of the season.
Nike talked about it when they made new shoes.
Yeah, I brought it. I remember I had said that I might take Barrett over Zion simply based on longevity because you never know when he's going to wear out, right?
Maple Mamba.
We hope that you never hear about Zion Williamson wearing out and unable to play anymore because he's so big, but it's a possibility with a guy that size, and it's been talked about. So hopefully his conditioning isn't a problem. Hopefully his health isn't a problem because he is outstanding. He's electric. He's so fun to watch.
Yeah.
I have stayed up to watch late night Pelicans games more often, late night games at all, just to watch him play, just because he's so fun, right? And
yeah,
so for the Pelicans, if the Pelicans lose that's a big loss for them. So hopefully his health is fine.
The two matchups against LeBron were my favorites this season altogether of any basketball game that I've watched, Raptors or not. The two matchups that he had against LeBron were unreal. The first one, I think LeBron outscored him by 1. And the second one, he outscored, out-rebounded, out everything LeBron. And I think to myself, because I'm 26 and I don't quite remember LBJ coming into the league, I think for me, Zion is kind of me getting to witness that great generational basketball, like LeBron 2.0, like a guy that's way too big to be that physical, that quick and agile, and all the things that he is, just an absolute monster, right? So he's kind of my little... And much like any other young, like there's a lot of guys who are 10 years old basketball fans, right? Who like, that's who they're going to be looking up to. That's what I kind of relate to, where I didn't watch a ton of basketball to grow up watching LeBron. But as a 26-year-old, I'm sitting here looking at a 19-year-old kid and I'm like, oh my God, look at Zion go. It's a crazy experience for myself now, but I miss LeBron a little bit. Kind of missed out on that.
Yeah, LeBron's one thing. You know what? You know who I like to liken it to, and I didn't get a chance to watch this guy. It's Shaq, right?
Oh, there you go.
Like how impressive was Shaq growing up, and how many headlines did this guy grab? And obviously, the shooting in Zion is better than Shaq, right? He can shoot,
right.
He can make his free throws, but just in the overall all-encompassing nature of what Zion brings, and it's the one name thing, right? Zion, Shaq. How like the players that are able to do this, LeBron, Kobe. Like the
Pele.
The list is very, very short for the guys who are able to do this, right?
Maradona.
So, and for him to be in there in his first year, and I'm talking about basketball. Stop bringing up legends of other sports. For him to be in there in his first year and be known like to have the one name moniker. I mean, I only see good things for the kid, but health is number one. It'll always be the question if he remains the size he is when is his body going to break down?
Another Mark Rowe segue for you here, because I'm starting to listen to a lot of Mark Rowe stuff on TSN. He fills in for everybody. Health is number one in that league. It's also number one in the NFL, where the NFLPA and the league agreed to no preseason games. Isn't that kind of crazy, John? You got rookies like Joe Burrow, who haven't played a single NFL game. And they're going to be thrown in feet first into the fire, playing their very first NFL game in a regular season. But I think the bigger issue here is that players, their entire lives, don't have to go through preseason, right? It's not something that is even an issue for any football, even in college, any football team. They just, from what I've understood, Marcellus Wiley has filled me in quite well this week. You just play against a lower division team your first couple of weeks to warm up, but there's certainly no preseason. There's no money being made by owners in preseason. And it sounds like the NFL finally agrees with the league or NFLPA, not to force players to go through such 4 games of nonsense, it sounds like. So there's something I think you'll be more of an expert than me on, because you're a huge NFL fan. We've got that in the Washington football team announcement to talk about. But first, let's break down this whole lack of preseason games. Do you think it's going to be good for players, or do you think you'll have your guy like Joe Burrow, who still has an issue with just the way, like you're going to be, you don't have any real segue into the NFL is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I understand what you're trying to say with Burrow. Is he going to have an issue dealing with the talent on all of the
Yeah,
teams? Because
where
you
preseason's a
know,
little weaker, obviously.
when you play in college football, there's always, there are 4 or 5 super dominant teams who have amazing rosters, and then you face everybody else. But in the NFL, all of the teams are composed of the players from those 4 or 5 teams for the most part. So you're facing, the talent level is much higher. So I can understand where you're coming from there, and I think Burrow might have a little bit of a hard time um, uh, dealing with the talent level in the NFL, but he'll catch up quick. The preseason was never more of a joke than last year when the Raiders took a game to West Coast Canada, and the
That's
field
right.
was bad, and it was
Oh, we got chirped
an
so
80
hard.
yard game, and they didn't even finish the whole game,
My
and
God.
they charged regular season prices for the tickets to watch plugs play, and it was so bad to watch that everyone knew that the preseason was a joke and always has been a joke in the NFL. So I think that this is something that'll be taken in for the future, so long as the teams can make up the revenue elsewhere. It just makes sense, because in a game like football, how often have we seen a player go down to a severe injury in the last preseason game of the year on a fluke play that he shouldn't have even been out there making?
Yeah, exactly. And that's again the whole issue with preseason is half of these superstars aren't really going to play any, like in the first place. They might get a couple of snaps by the end of preseason, right? But those first few games, it's guys that don't make much of a difference anyway. You've already got your team picked, so you don't like your preseason should really make no difference. Again, it's I think it's a whole different animal in the NHL because it's lengthy, it's a little bit longer, and it is gearing up for like an 82 game schedule instead of one game a week where, you're going to have your normal rest and relaxation and getting back throughout the week. But I guess the NFL and preseason have never really made tons of sense in terms of the players in the league not really agreeing. So good for the players to win, some battle. We know how, especially lately in every league, it's always player versus owner, how much money can I squeeze out of these athletes? And are they willing to play a fifth preseason game? I feel like when they talked about the expanded NFL schedule, the conversation for a little while there was, well, I think they're talking about adding a fifth preseason game. So there are people I think that are happy to hear the opposite. But either way, that makes the most sense to me. If the players don't want to play in it, it makes no sense to have it.
Yeah, we'll see a 17 or an 18 game season and then no preseason. I think that teams will be okay with that, because you're wiping a lot of the low, what is the word I'm looking for? There's no investment in preseason games for anyone,
Yeah,
right? So if you get injured and you have no investment in the game,
risk
then
reward is.
it's almost worse, right? The risk reward, right? So I think that
Oh,
to play more extra regular season games to see the complete abolishment of preseason. That's where I see it coming to eventually here in the future. That's where the teams will make their money back, right, on regular season games, and fans will be more willing to pay regular season ticket prices to see regular season games.
100%. Last thing, let's get out of here on this because you just got choppy there and I got nervous. I thought you cut right out on me, but we're good. Doesn't matter. We really have one little thing to get to, and it's just the name changes that we keep staying a little bit updated on. We'll do CFL first because it was just a quick statement. The Edmonton Eskimos, formerly known as the Edmonton Eskimos, they released their statement this week saying yes, they're going to keep the double E if they can, but of course they're yet another team that has officially ended their old branding and name in response to these social injustices and the long suffering and the long requests from people to change the name, right? They're finally doing that. So we'll find out real soon what Edmonton's name is. And today, John, you let me know that Washington announced that they will, at least for the time being, just be the Washington football team. Very basic, very simple branding. How do you feel about that?
Okay, so first I'm going to take a crack at Edmonton.
Mm,
Edmonton changing their name, but keeping the logo, keeping the colors. That's a marketing thing. They're trying to save as much money as possible. People know the Edmonton colors, they know the logo, and so they want to keep it as familiar as possible.
yeah,
I heard that they could be possibly going with the Edmonton Empire. And unfortunately for them, empires are normally run by dictators. and it's sort of a not a good
Sometimes
thing to
empires
agree.
do enslave people, yeah,
Yeah,
and stuff.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
we're getting into touchy territory, but yeah, you never know.
that's
What,
what I'm
yeah.
saying. So like maybe not like let's try and stay out of that so that you don't end up in this situation again in 20 years where someone's like, oh, you shouldn't have chosen that name and now you got to change it again. That's like, I'm sorry, I heard you laugh. I know the CFL won't be around in 20 years.
Here's your
Um,
hey, John. Come on, I'm supportive of Canadian sport. It's our only league. That is our only exclusive league. And hey, look what happens when you let Americans in our league. They win and make it a joke. So we have to keep it exclusive, right? Obviously, but it's our only league. I'm
the
protective of it too.
CFL should have signed a partnership agreement with the NFL over a decade ago, and they would have been much healthier for it. Nobody cares really, other than people who are in a rapidly aging demographic. No one really cares about the
That's true.
CFL.
That's
So
very true.
it's the very sad truth. But yeah, going on to Washington. I tweeted, is this lazy or is this the exact opposite of lazy? And I wanted to get a little bit of discussion going because in my opinion, I think it's the exact opposite. I think this is the only move you could make with the little amount of time you had to make an entire new brand, a new logo. You want to put a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money into it because you want it to be there for the next 100 years or
Yeah.
more,
Yeah.
right? You want to create the next classic logo. So
It's a
I
legacy brand.
understand.
You're talking,
Yeah.
yeah, generational.
Yeah, so I understand them going with Washington football team. They want to keep the same colors for, once again, marketing reasons. People know those colors. They know what they're for. They'll be replacing the logo that they had on their helmet with the number of the player wearing that helmet in gold script. So it'll be a gold large number on the
Yep.
side of their head. I don't know what the optics will be of that, but for the time being, I'm
Hope.
right. They've done something that
Can you
people
repeat
thought would
yourself
never
there?
happen.
Can you repeat yourself?
Um,
Just the
uh,
last 5 seconds ago, you cut out for a second.
Oh, I'm getting that update now. Just 1 second. Here we go. Are we good?
Yep.
So I have to give them a little bit of slack, a little bit of rope, because they're doing something we thought would never be done. The name is being changed. So yeah, if it needs to be Washington football team for the time being, you made a good point, and I'll let you get to it. I'm totally okay with it.
Okay. Yeah, my point, honestly, man, it was just simple. Like we, in our own backyard, we have the TFC, right? You never refer to them as the Toronto Football Club, although that is their full name. And the WFT or WF Club, whatever it is, Washington Football Team, it does have that Euro vibe to it, right? It does feel like the three-letter acronym a lot of clubs go after. Essentially, you think of the European football clubs, but even over here in MLS, we've had that same kind of set of, acronym to reference a team nickname. So I really think it might take some time to grow on people. And I tried to say it to you. I said, imagine this, like tonight's Monday night matchup is the Green Bay Packers and WFT. Like it doesn't really roll off the tongue completely, not for me at least. So it might take me some time even just to get used to that, or there may even be a nickname. People aren't going to call them the Washingtons, you know what I mean, which they have been doing. And they've been doing that out of spite. So I would assume, right? Like people don't want to call them the Washingtons. So like whatever name they end up adopting, I think they will find one eventually. I don't think it's lazy either, but I do think they're kind of going with more of just a really basic, simple vibe. And if it seems really weird or unique to you, just think of your own backyard, like TFC. It's Toronto Football Club, and they don't really get called the football team all the time. So WFT or whatever we call them, I think will grow on us, maybe. I just can't guarantee that because the way you heard me say that in the Monday night game with WFT, it's like that sounds like it's on a network. Are we watching it on WFT?
Yeah, the WFT network. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's my final point there. I don't really have much else to talk about. We will probably have to get back together, in the next 2 or 3 days, because now that the MLB's opening day has started up and we're waiting on, the next 48 hours to find out who else has COVID before things really start to get the ball rolling. We're going to have to get together soon, man. But anything else you felt like touching on tonight?
Nope. Just quick update. 3-1 Yankees in the bottom of the third as we speak right now. So
Who are they playing?
they're playing the Washington Nationals, so the defending champs. So it's looking like Garrett Cole is as dominant as ever. And the pinstripes didn't add any extra stress or getting all that money didn't take any of his drive away. So
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, man. Well, you have a good rest of your night. Go Jays tomorrow. They play Tampa Bay, so we'll tune into that and we'll keep updated. But we should be back anytime soon in the next 3 or 4 days with another brand new pod, some more information to dive into, have a take on.
Peace.
See you, buddy. Take care.
See you, man. Have a good night, eh?
You too, buddy. See ya.